Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thank you all for joining Kepler Analytics for our first webinar for 2023. My name is Kylie Smart and I'm the Head of Customer Success at Kepler. Before I introduce you to our special guests and speakers today, I'm going to take you through just a few webinar tips for those who are new to our webinar sessions. So for the settings and the sound, they are located in the top right-hand corner of your screen. If you notice any issues today with your video quality, if you can't see me or any of the speakers, just refresh your browser. You'll also notice on the right-hand side of your screen, you've got a chat box. So please introduce yourself, say hello, tell us where you're from. Don't be shy. As everyone knows, normally it's a very interactive session. We definitely really encourage to ask questions and get involved in today's session, and we'll do our best to work our way through the questions. So we've got a large audience today, and not everyone here is some of our clients. So for those of you who are brand new to being exposed to the Kepler Analytics webinars, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are. So we are a unique people counting technology, and the problem that we're aiming to solve is to help you better understand your customers' path to purchase in store. And we give you fantastic insights and measures that you cannot currently see with your own metrics that you have within your business. Retailers who use Kepler increase their sales, improve their customer satisfaction, and also decrease their operating costs across approximately 87% of your network within 1 year. So that's a pretty amazing stats. Now, I've got two speakers. The first one I'm going to introduce you to is a big warm welcome to one of our own, Mr. Tony DeFazio, who is our Head of Product and Retail Insights. Tony's going to be taking us through the year in review and also some of the trends of what to expect this year. So I hope everyone's got a coffee, their lunch in front of them, and enjoy the ride for the next hour. So I'm going to give a big warm welcome to Tony. Can you please join me on the stage? And he's joining us, and I think your mic might be on mute. I think it's the story of all our lives in the video calls for 2022.
Welcome to the post-pandemic world, eh? Thank you for that warm welcome, Kylie. Nice to see you, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get stuck in. So as Kylie said, we're going to talk through, thanks, Miles. We're going to talk through some stuff that's happened over the last 12 months or 2022, and then some forecasts for 23. If you've got any questions, Bala, great to see you. If you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat. Always happy to take them as we go. So look, let's jump in without further ado. We're going to start with December 22. Where does the data come from? The data comes from our KRI product. There's about 1,800 like-for-like stores over several years, over many years. It's designed to show you a share of wallet. So this is an aggregated level of data. There is, of course, more granular stuff in there. If you need any info around KRI, please do reach out, let us know. Or you want some more granular analysis, let us know. So 22 December, let's start with that. It grew. Sales grew versus 21, which was fantastic. However, our sales targets grew a little bit faster. So there were a few retailers behind expectation. We'll touch on that in a sec. ATV, the trend is changing. ATV has been really, really strong for several years now. The pandemic has actually lifted ATVs quite strongly. But now that we're starting to drop below 21, and December was the first time that we saw that gap sort of really widen out. It had started to hit a little bit earlier in the year. But December was certainly most noticeable. Sales conversion just keeps going. So sales conversion, we'll see a little bit later as well, is at record levels. So let's have a look at some of the tables. So sales grew in grey versus 21. Sales grew 1.4%. Our sales targets grew 2.9. The big issue is that, like we said, we're starting to see that gap now on the ATV. So ATV down about 1.6 versus same stores, remember, like for like, same time last year. Transactions increased versus 21, so that's a really, really good sign. But versus 2019, we're still well down on transactions. Now, that's because the traffic still isn't there. We're starting to see some returns, right? So versus pre-pandemic levels. We're still about 29% down across all precincts, across all locations, Australia and New Zealand. We're still about 29% down. Less down versus 21, 16.2% down, but it's still considerable. Big gap. This was a big turnaround on last year. So shopfront conversion has been a massive issue. Those that know me know that I like to preach about shopfront conversion. It is the lifeblood of stores. If customers or traffic doesn't walk in, you have a really hard time selling to them. But that actually trended up for the first time in a very long time. So shopfront conversion, 9% higher than December last year, and sales conversion, again, really, really strong. Have a look at that. We're converting almost 46% better than we were in December 2019. So that is that gives you an idea of just how much scale and scope. Just another key piece, and this is all contained in the December radar that we pushed out a couple of weeks ago. If you have any questions or you want to see this in more detail, please just reach out to your client partner or the details at the tail end of this session, and we can send out that radar to you. It's a little bit more comprehensive, but this is basically showing that sales pulled forward. So the effect of Black Friday is that Black Friday is now taking an extra little bit more than 1% of sales over that 5-6 week window from Black Friday to Boxing Day, and the sales are coming out of Boxing Day itself. So it used to be pretty balanced pre-pandemic, 2019, almost 19% or 18.5% for Black Friday, 18.5% for Boxing Day, and the pre-Christmas week equaling about 28 and a bit. The pre-Christmas week has nudged almost 30 the last couple of years, 29 last year, but you can see that Boxing Day sales dropped to below 16. So there was 2.5% of sales that have pulled forward earlier in the campaign. Now, there's a couple of different reasons to that. It's got to do with timing and so on and so forth. But I think the shift in mindset, there's not towards that Black Friday sale, there's not necessarily an increase in sales over the entire period. The increase in sales was pretty moderate, not out of line with the normal growth that we saw for the entire period. It's just that Black Friday is shifting everything a little bit to the left on this table. So I might spin on, if there's any questions about December 22, pop them in now, because I might spin in now to the whole year of 22. Again, we did a radar on this one not so long ago. 22, really strong sales growth. Footwear and apparel led the way as a category. Victoria still showing some laggard tendencies. The state dropped a little bit further comparative to the rest of the states. It didn't quite hit the same level of growth. Now, whether your opinion is that Victoria is a bellwether state and is a leading indicator for moving forward, or perhaps some greater impacts from COVID, we had a look at, did Victoria bounce back differently to the rest of the country, given that Victoria had, I lost count after lockdown, 743. But what was that impact? We didn't see much of that. We didn't see Victoria bouncing back to such an extent that it would distort the 22 results. So perhaps there's something about Victoria being the bellwether state in that. ATV is beginning to decline, as I mentioned, and we started to see that about 3 months after the interest rate rises. So, and we'll cover that off in a sec as well. And the outside traffic declines, they're here. It's better than it was before, but I don't think we're ever going to see the halcyon days of pre-pandemic. Anyway, so record sales year in 22, really strong year, pretty much ahead month on month over the last 4 years since these records began. Sales conversion, again, a record year. A couple of little dips through October. A few people sort of expressed a little bit of softness, in the early part of November as well. But generally speaking, a really solid year and overall a record year, and sales conversion in December at the highest level we've ever seen it. So that is fantastic. Now, what that's doing is it's driving a really, really high average visitor value. So anyone who walks into store is now worth a ridiculous amount of cash. And we'll touch on that in a sec, but they're now worth twice as much as what they were 4 or 5 years ago. On an AVV basis. Sales per outside traffic is up. Now, the reason I like to put this in is because it's got to do with the quality of traffic and who have we lost. We haven't lost the purposeful shopper. We haven't lost the shopper. We haven't lost the transactor. We've lost the hanger-on. We've lost the group sizes. We've lost the the passengers of the shopping trip. So this is a really, really important one to keep an eye on, especially when you're setting targets for stores, because the ball game has shifted a little bit. So if you're thinking about your sales targets and are we setting sales targets at an appropriate level, sales per outside, we've seen some really good results with people able to tinker on that basis, or even aligning. Even we do some analysis in the back end, but you have a look at sales per outside and what a store has actually achieved, whether it's hit or missed its target. But sales per outside does give a better indication of what a store is capable of. And then one of my favorite metrics, strike rate for time. So how many transactions do I generate per unit of dwell time in store? And customers are now much more efficient than they have been. There was a bit of a lagged period through the course of the year where customers were taking longer, or perhaps through the environments that we were giving them, they were taking longer to purchase. Maybe economic considerations, but customers are certainly much more efficient through the tail end of the year. And they're expecting, I think it's now an expectation, that I am able to transact more quickly than I was before. No doubt there's click and collect elements in there, but certainly not to a level where it's going to distort results so that it's 15, 20, 30% lower than it was just a few years ago. Bala has a really good question. Does your radar analytics provide for increase in price adopted by retailers? Otherwise, the value, excellent point. Bala, it doesn't. We don't take into account a CPI element or a price rise element into the pricing. We just look at the raw ATV. We will be introducing some metrics later this, in fact, probably later this quarter, around average unit price percentage shifts into our KRI products and basket size and units and all that kind of stuff. In fact, one of my guys is actually working on it as we speak. So there will be some stuff on that, and units will definitely be an indicator. But very, very good question, Bala. That is a key indicator of what we're experiencing in terms of those sales and ATV rise as well, which makes those ATV declines a little bit more concerning as well. And we'll address that in a moment too. Retail sales are the highest in 5 years. We are 10% above pre-pandemic levels. In fact, we're 10.3% above where we were in 2019. Obviously, the pandemic knocked sales back more than a touch, but we are 10% above where we were before the pandemic started on a like-for-like basis. So I think that is an amazing result. Different parts of the country have performed better. CBD stores have recovered ground better than some others. Regional locations, not necessarily so. You want to look at your location profile. Again, that's something that Kepler can help out with. If you've got the KRI product, we can guide you through that as well. But different location profiles, certainly outlet centres have performed very, very differently to some others as well. So spinning on, got to click back on that screen, spinning on for just a moment. And this is that Victoria piece. So you can see Victoria compared to Australia and New Zealand in the grey line, Australia excluding Vic in the blue line, and then Vic in the red. You can see that Vic has been the laggard state throughout the course of the year. Those retailers who are heavily exposed in Vic might have had a softer December as Vic went down in December. And there are a couple of key periods, Father's Day and the back to school, that tail end of Boxing Day and the back to school at the start of the year as well. So generally speaking, sales were really soft. If someone had said to you, would you take sales of 3-4% up, 12% up pre-pandemic, you would have bitten their hand off. Would you have taken a 12% up, or 9 months of the year up and 3 months of the year down? Again, you would have jumped at the opportunity. So it's not necessarily a bad story compared to where we were, but it does bear interest that Victoria is softer than other locations. So I'm going to move into the 23 forecasts and what we see as some of the behavioural and some of the metric forecasts. If there are any, that's really good, Pete. Thank you for your feedback on the poll. It is confidential, anything that you provide in there. So that is really, really good feedback. And we will have some metrics around this moving forward. So that's some really good stuff. Thank you for your feedback on that one. There are three trends that we've spoken about before. The three key trends, and we'll talk about this in a sec, is centre traffic spread is going to remain significantly below pre-pandemic levels. We're currently at about 29% down. It's not going to rebound. It's going to take time to rebuild to where it was. Reality is retailers are going to have to work harder to draw traffic not only into their stores when they're in the shopping precincts, but actually to draw traffic to shopping centres as well. So it's almost incumbent on the retailer to have that purposeful brand. We've seen that traffic is now, as we said often, traffic is now far more purposeful. They know where they want to go, they know where they want to be, and they know what they're going to do before they even get there, before they get to the shopping precinct. So that directional traffic is really, really important. I think that there is a little bit of headway to be made. I think there's a lot of ground to be made by pinching the purpose of some of that traffic that's coming into centre to visit other people. I think that represents probably the biggest growth opportunity for a lot of retailers, but we'll talk about that a bit more in a sec. Because the traffic that does remain is more valuable than ever. That value of that outside traffic, their spend propensity in store, their willingness to convert, their willingness to transact, and even if ATV comes back a little bit, the value is really, really significant. New trends to be aware of: stores are trading fewer hours with less traffic and delivering more sales, generally speaking. So there's less trading hours last year. I think most centres pulled back their hours, particularly at key periods. I didn't see any of the 36-hour trades across the country. Retail rents will remain contentious through 2023. I see this as being a big spike. If traffic is starting to come back, and it is, we've seen it is, not to the levels, but we know landlords will then take that as a trigger to start boosting rents and possibly recouping some of the difficult times they had during COVID. And there is definitely a shift in traffic and consumer behaviours across days of week. We published something about this mid-year. I wanted to do a full year update. Those behaviours are now entrenched. So let's have a look at traffic levels. So traffic levels are 35% down outside traffic. Remember, this is not shopping centre entries. This is traffic past doors. So consider this as the retail traffic, that traffic that is exploring throughout shopping centres. That level is 35% down versus 2018. It is coming back up. You can see there is a nice little kicker at the tail end, but a little kicker at the tail end is going to take a long, long time to reboot if we want to get back to that 35%. Inside traffic is down 46. Again, a slight kicker at that tail end, certainly helped by December, but there are issues here. There are structural issues. So I wouldn't go building businesses on the basis of, well, outside traffic will go to pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year. It won't. And inside traffic will be back to where it was pre-pandemic by the end of this year. It won't. These gaps are significant. Will they get there in time? Probably, almost certainly. I certainly hope so for the retail industry, but it takes a long time to bridge these really, really big numbers. Traffic is more predisposed. So shopfront conversion has come down, and we've spoken about this. So shopfront conversion is now 16% down on where we started in 2018. So there are definitely less browsers. I hated that message when I had my stores. Oh, just browsing. No, you're not. I'm lovely, and my store is fantastic, but you didn't come in here just for a look. You wouldn't have walked into this store if we hadn't caught your eye on some level. The other thing that underpins this is sales conversion is now 63% above. We talked about before about sort of 45, 46% above 2019. It is 63% above 2018 levels. It is at record levels. It is flattening, however. There's not a lot more scope for this to actually improve. We're now at rates of, in most months, we're now at rates of more than 1 in 2 customers or more than 1 in 2 traffic are buying. So there's not a lot of scope for this to continue growing to these levels. So this is an interesting piece, right? Shopfront conversion, I see that as the challenge, because once they come into store, the likelihood of buying is now better than 1 in 2. So if you've got a 50% chance of doing something in store, then that's a really, really good reason to drag them in by hook or by crook. I'm calling this the by hook or by crook year. You've got to drag them in by hook or by crook. Sales per outside is now starting to come back a little bit as we're seeing ATVs drop. So any traffic in the centre is now worth 69% more than what it was in 2018 because that traffic value has dropped, and anyone who is inside your store is now worth double. So we've gotten rid of the hangers on. Anyone who's inside is inside to purchase. That traffic is far more valuable. The cost of acquisition in precinct needs to be a focus. So what does it cost you to get them inside your store once they're in the shopping centre? So how do you do this? How do you activate this? Is it a case of the expectations or sandwich boards out the front of the store? Oh, sorry, I did miss a question from Tennille. I do apologise. Do you think pre-pandemic outside traffic numbers had a greater percentage of international travellers? We yet to still see these. Look, I think there's definitely an element to both. I think the overseas travellers is certainly an element to that. However, Tennille, we're seeing these drops in a lot of places. So certainly the outlet centres, especially the airport-based outlet centres, yeah, definitely. I think that they're being hit pretty hard. But remember, we're drawn across hundreds of locations everywhere from Orange through to Perth DFO, up to Bundaberg and everywhere in the middle. I definitely think the international travel has had an impact, but not to this degree, not to that sort of 45, 46%. Or 38, 35% that we're seeing in outside traffic. Vivian, to answer your question, yes, absolutely. The copies of the presentation will be available. And there's also the two radars, the December radar and the 22 wrap-up radar that we can send out to you as well. I hope that answers your question, Tennille. And again, thank you for your question. Moving on, I've got to go back to that screen. Moving on to the next slide, ATV continues to underpin store sales growth. So what we saw was 1.7% less trading hours in 22 versus prior year. Versus 2019, 27% less traffic, far more sales dollars per hour of dwell time. So customers are far more intentional when they're inside. They're either spending less time, which we know they're spending less time, and they're spending more dollars. So there's a lot more to that. Sales dollar targets per hour, however, we're expecting, whilst customers are giving us an extra 27% of dollars per hour they spend in store, we're expecting an extra $32 per trading hour, or an extra 32% of dollars per trading hour. So our expectations on store productivity are going through the roof. Customers aren't quite able to meet that. There's a concept that I talk about called transactive capacity. Transactive capacity is how enabled is the store from wall to wall, from floor to ceiling? How enabled is the store to be able to encourage someone to purchase? So it takes into account everything from the ambience factors that we pipe into our stores, whether it be musics or fragrances or temperature, all of those wonderful things, through to merchandising signage, category signage, navigation, pathways, linked pathways, all those impulse zones. Not just impulse zones at registers, but impulse zones throughout our stores, and those secondary purchase moments that we produce throughout our store. How are we enabling our stores to close that 5.2% gap? Because our customers are willing to give us less time, and we've seen dwell time come back. How do we maximize that dwell time, that usage, that pathway to be able to deliver to our expectations of our store productivity? Retail rents are going to continue to be a hot issue. So we've developed a store network toolkit. David may will talk about this a little bit more down the track, but we see landlords as trying to recover some of those losses or some of those gaps that they had pre-pandemic. I'm sure all of you, or during the pandemic, I'm sure all of you have felt that to some degree. If traffic is returning, and we've seen that it is starting to return, but remember, insides does not equal outside, or entries into a shopping centre does not equal outside your storefront. And I don't care if traffic is 50 metres to the left. If they don't walk past your door, they're not viable traffic to you. So we see this as being really, really important. We see the need for rent per passerby as a key metric moving forward. Inside traffic and outside traffic has changed when it is. So this is a full year comparison. New Zealand is even more pronounced than this. Some states are more pronounced than this. Some centre profiles are more pronounced than this. If you have any questions, please reach out to your client partner and please let us know how we can assist. If you're not a client yet, please, again, still reach out. We can still offer support on this front. But you can see that declines in traffic are far less earlier in the week and earlier in the day than they are later in the day. Late night trades have been hit very, very hard. Saturday and Sunday trade has been hit very, very hard. Sales conversion, sales dollars don't follow these trends, which tells me that either the group size has been absolutely decimated on Saturdays and Sundays, which would make you think that the centre is almost empty on a Saturday and Sunday and late night trades. They don't feel that way when I visit them. Or that we haven't shifted our rosters and behaviours. And because we've got less people to deal with on Saturdays and Sundays, that personalisation, that ability to recover shop floors and focus on transactive capacity, whether it's service or stock or ambience or lighting or whatever it may be, we're better at that on Saturdays and Sundays because we've got more capacity to do it, because rosters haven't altered. There are probably some changes. Landlords have stopped sharing operational metrics for the tenants category. Do you see this with all landlords, or is it only we who are not getting this? I think that's a really good question. I don't have an answer on what landlords are sharing. If anyone else wants to pop up on that one, that'd be great. MAT comparisons are skewed due to lesser numbers of days trading. Yeah, I get that. And I do understand. Yeah, Kylie, thank you for that feedback. We're hearing this across the board. Less trading days. 2022 is the new normal, right? That's where we are. This is where we are. It's going to take time to recover back to pre-pandemic levels, whether it's 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. I'm not sure. Whether we open the floodgates on international tourism and everyone rushes in because Australia is such an amazing place. Fantastic. To Neil's point, I'm sure all of these factors will have percentage point increments into that 35-40% declines that we're seeing. But this is new normal. This is where we are. This is what we've lived. This is 12, 13, 14, 15 months, or in the case of Perth, even longer. This is where we are. This is the new paradigm. And so I think that those arguments are probably a little bit difficult. Bala, let us know how we can assist you with this, because these trends are available to you as a long-standing Kepler client. So let us know how we can assist you with this. I want to jump into some forecasts. I hope that answered your question, Bala. I want to jump into some forecasts. This is the key piece. We see outside traffic bouncing back a fraction, about 1%. Happy days, I'll take it. We see shop front conversion coming back about 2%, so 2 percentage points. Sorry, I should say, not percentage points. So if you're running at 10%, it'll go up to 10.2. So we see you moving up just a little bit on that shop front conversion. I think this is the battleground. I think this is the metric you want to shift. I think this is the metric you need to work very hard to shift because of the value of traffic that is out there in centres. We think your inside traffic will come back 2.9%, but bearing in mind, if you have a look at the bottom of the table down here, we think it's going to come back 2.9%, which leaves you just a paltry 38% below 2019. So although we think these are going to move, we're still well down on pre-pandemic levels. Sales conversion, we see that relatively flat. So, I mean, we're up at, I don't have a trend on UPT, Bala, at this stage. I apologize for that. We are working on it as we speak. That is a really cool piece. And once we have that, I will be updating these metrics to present a UPT trend as well. We do see transactions rising simply because we have more traffic to deal with. And sales conversion is going to nudge up that little bit. So we do see transactions moving up a touch. ATV will come back. We're seeing sales grow 1.9% as a trickle-down effect of these metrics. We're seeing a moderate 1.9%. Now, I'm going to, I thought about this long and hard, this word moderate. Those that know me know that I like to choose my words really carefully. Again, let's go back 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016. In fact, let's keep counting back until sort of 2008, 2009. If I had offered you a 1.9% sales increase in any of those years, what would you have taken? What was your outlook? Most retailers would have bitten anyone's hand off for a 1.9% sales increase. I think there's scope for the savvy retailer to push this though, right? Because as Bala pointed out earlier, there are price rises underpinning this. So some of this is going to be assumed by this. Some of that sales rise is going to be consumed by price rises. Maybe there's some margin pressure in there which may not be offset. I still think that shopfront conversion is the key. I think that the value of traffic that we are seeing outside stores and the propensity of them to purchase once they move inside stores means that the cost of acquisition in centres must be a consideration for retailers pushing forward. Is it a sandwich board out the front that says, hey, today I've got a manager's special? Or is it, God forbid, but let's say we go back to the old days of the spruikers at the front of our stores. Please don't do that. But anyway, look, maybe that's the answer. And if it is the answer, then do it. Flashing lights, TV screens, whatever the case may be, I do think that shopfront conversion is the challenge. Summaries, what do these trends mean? Rent per passerby needs to enter the negotiation with landlords because it is not entries into shopping centre. If they enter and don't want to walk past your store, they aren't worth a peanut to you. So happy days, glad they're here. Let's see if we can get them to move past our store. Until they move past our store, they're not worth very much. Transactive capacity must be a focus. So speed to transaction, high value journeys, understanding that journey inside your store and understanding how to create the incremental purchase, impulse purchases, spot promotions, understanding what is my most valuable pathway in store, regardless of how big or small your store is. Understanding that piece is going to be the key answer to that transactive capacity. That's going to be the answer to how do I preserve my ATV. To Bala's point as well, I don't have it state-wise, but we can work on that for you. So we will certainly have a look at that and prep that up on a state-by-state basis. But give me about a week and a half, if that's okay. The guy who does it is fantastic, but he's allocated to a couple of tasks. I loaded him up pretty heavily this morning. Shop fronts are going to need to work harder than ever before. I'm going to make a couple of big calls here. Redoing what has been done before does not work. Doing new versions of what has been done before also does not work. We've done that for 3 years, 5 years. We've seen that our shop front conversions come back 16%. We need to test new concepts, stores of the future, or different layouts or different navigations, different visuals, different ways that the back of the store interacts with the front of the store, different pathways, different engagements around everything. TV screens, do they work? Don't they work? I've done 3 or 4 different research pieces on TV screens at front of stores. I'm yet to see conclusive evidence that they work across the board. Windows, structures, visual merchandising, all of these things, we need new ways of executing our entire store to get shop front conversion up. That's a battleground. Obviously, you can't redo store of the future everywhere, but testing that concept early and testing that concept really, really well, setting those benchmarks, using your data, using your outside, inside traffic, shop front conversion. Were there differences in particular categories and sectors? Sarah, there were. Definitely your client partner can assist you with that. Key standouts were definitely in the footwear and the apparel sectors, but then footwear had a very, very tough time during the pandemic. Homewares and those sort of electrical goods, they had a softer growth than average, but again, they had a blistering period during the pandemic. So, but there are differences. Do you compare these results with other markets such as, I haven't, Colin, at this point. We're looking at getting some data sets, some really good data sets from those markets. The reason, it's kind of a catch-22, right? We've got this really beautiful, really powerful, really active and live data set in Australia and New Zealand that gives us what is actually happening on the shop floors. I can't get that data set from overseas effectively at the moment. We are working on it, however, and you'll probably see some big movements on that over the next 12 to 18 months. But thank you for your question. It bugs me. It is something I'd really, really love to be able to do. Certainly during some of our radars, I know we did it for Easter last year and Valentine's Day and a couple of others. We do look at some of the figures from overseas markets, and we do that on a more spot comparison as to what they're forecasting. a couple of key points. I'm about to run out of time. Expectations will continue to rise. We're going to continue to set our targets high. That's fine. We need to make sure that we're efficient and deliver support for stores to be able to do this. And we need to make sure that it's linked to that last point, right? Customers have changed when they shop. So moving resources will grow sales, but we need to look at that transactive capacity across the entirety of the shop floor to make sure that we're maximising all of that traffic that comes into store. I think that's it from me. If there's any other questions, otherwise, Kylie, if you want to jump back on and we can get ready for the next phase.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tony. That was very insightful. And just a couple of points from me. The piece that you were talking about in relation to the network toolkit and the centre negotiations. I know you and I recently attended the retail property marketplace a few months ago. And one of the biggest things that we were hearing from the leasing managers of retailers was that the biggest gap that they were experiencing was that the traffic insights passing by that exact location. That was the piece of information or the gold nugget that they couldn't find or understand. Is this location truly going to succeed for me? And what is it that I'm paying for? You absolutely hit the nail on the head there. So that's very much been a popular talking point for us. And also just taking a look at that exact location, who's passing by, but also how is it performing in relation to the centre as well. So we recently introduced that network toolkit. I know DM will speak about that shortly in a moment, but that's been a really, really powerful tool. The other piece too, and I think especially more so for the businesses that don't currently have any traffic insights, is that rostering certainly needs to pivot. And if it hasn't changed, it needs to be reassessed, because we know that traffic's coming in earlier at the start of the week. So Mondays and Tuesdays are becoming more eventful, and they're typically first thing in the morning. So I remember rostering for many, many years, and generally you had, your 12 to 3 lunchtime rush and maybe afternoon school rush. But those days have sort of really changed and evolved over time. So that rostering for the traffic has become certainly really critical. And I'm also hearing some really interesting wins out there too around whether it's cost saving from a wage perspective, or is it increased sales, because with the bucket of hours that I've got to spend, I'm actually spending it where I need them. Therefore, improved sales results. So it's really basic science.
Yeah, look, the stuff that we saw in NRF, the tour that I took, I reckon 70% of the stands, or at least it felt this way, was around how do I remove staff from my shop floor? How do I automate? How do I predict? How do I do away with staff? And I sat there and I thought, if this becomes the key piece, then I went shopping at Macy's and waited 45 minutes to try and drop some money over the counter. And I sat there and thought, surely removing more staff is not the answer to this. It's got to be about that transactive capacity. We've got to shift the dial. And keeping, as Ali said, labour optimisation. It's not about more and it's not about less. It's about when is it best. I think they're the key pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was that definitely rang a bell for myself. The other interesting piece, just to Bala's point before when he was talking about the insights that retailers are now getting from landlords. We're certainly hearing a lot of feedback over the last couple of months, especially around how is my business or brand performing in the centre? Because historically you would get reports emailed to you, they'd drop them around in the centres. But that seems to have, left the building. Tony, have you got a view on why that's happening?
If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. I think, the old advice from our mums and our grandmas. Look, I think, the world has shifted for everyone, and everyone's a little bit nervous. But that's where, it's data-driven decisions. This was a data-driven pandemic. The solutions to it, the problem of it, the measuring of it, and the solution was all data. So the solution to how we adapt our businesses moving forward must also be data. And rent per passerby is a key piece. As Bala has said, yep, it's going to be difficult, but it is measurable, it is quantifiable. And if you get more passerby traffic, fantastic, it's worth more. But of course it's worth more because you then have more opportunity to grow your business. So I think the reason it's stopped is simply because there's possibly not good stories to tell, and more retailers know what the real story is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I've certainly seen a change I know for a lot of our clients, they're really starting to utilize more than ever that Kepler Retail Index dashboard, so they can start to unpack where are they sitting in their category, how is my store performing in that center. If it's overperforming, is the center overperforming as well, or is it because we've chosen a great location and we've got the mix right within the store with staff, operations, etc. So some really insightful pieces, and we absolutely will be sharing this afterwards. I think there's another question there from Bala before I
Bala has asked, do
introduce
landlords
David.
use or subscribe to Kepler Analytics? Certainly, a couple of minor landlords do, Bala, but no one that would be on your radar at this point. So a couple of small regional shopping centres. Are mall operators trying to use Placer AI data to determine rent traffic in certain locations in the mall? Claude, that's a really good question. Look, I think I would guess that they probably are trying to use this aggregated data. I have looked at a few of these sources around Placer AI and some of the Google stuff. It's interesting data. I'm not going to cast shadows on it. I have my own opinion on it, but I'm not an expert on that data. I would certainly suggest, if your landlord is bringing that up, that you do some significant research into those sources of data and their sources of risk. For example, maybe how many Apple phones, given that Apple is almost 50% market share, how many Apple phone data do they collect, and so on and so forth? What is their sample size versus Kepler data, which is, we know anyone who's walking past.
Great, excellent. Well, Tony, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I'm now going to introduce David Ma, who is our co-founder and CEO of Kepler Analytics. So please give a big warm welcome to David Ma to the stage. Give him a moment to join us, and he's going to have a chat with us all with some really key, interesting messages. Welcome, David.
Hey, Kylie. Thanks, everyone, for coming to this webinar. I founded this business, Kepler, about 7 years ago. And on the foundation of ensuring that our customers, you, succeed as much as you can as a business. And I want to emphasize our continued focus on ensuring that we support you and your work as best as we can, using insights and data in any way that we can provide you. We just came back from the National Retail Federation event in the US. I was there with 15 other team members, and we interacted with more than 300 retailers there over 3 days. And there is a strong theme of urgency in terms of the use of data to navigate economic uncertainties ahead of us. No one knows what's going to happen. I mean, even the big bankers of the world don't know that, but what we're seeing is that this urgency and hunger for data to optimize this, the store network is higher than we've ever seen. And we're committed to provide you with the best that we can in order to help you navigate through whatever uncertainty is ahead of us. And I think there's a question from Colin about the use of European and North American data in order to teach us back home here in Australia on any key lessons. So as most of you might know, we've made an acquisition of a US-based company a couple of months ago, and we are now having a complete network globally that is close to 30,000 locations, and we're integrating and incorporating that data set in order to help us understand the US and the European markets in a more deep level. And as soon as we can do that, we will start sharing those things with all of you. And if you have any specific areas you want to zoom into, very happy to dig into that as well. So in this next era of uncertainty, we want to ensure that we help our retailers in many different ways. And one of the ways that we are very focused on now is to utilize the network of sensors that we have especially in ANZ, multi-year data in pretty much every major shopping center, and very dense sensor networks as well, that we can help you make decisions on where to move your stores, where to open stores, and where to close stores. Choosing a location is one of the most expensive and pivotal exercises of expansion or optimizing your store network. And wherever we can help you in order to ensure that you optimize it, we would love to. And the data set that we have now in ANZ especially is very comprehensive. And in more occasions than not, when you are to look at a specific location in a center, we would have a sensor close to or even next door to that location that would have multi-year data that you can use in order to make an informed decision before you select the site. And this is something that if you want to explore further, please reach out to your account manager, and we will be very happy to look into how we can assist. And something that we are in the process of launching, and some of our clients already have early access to this, is what we call the prescriptive analytics, meaning the use of the data to provide direct action and suggestions to store managers in order to direct their actions in real time. Further to this, it also quantifies the value of those actions in dollar terms. And this is quite exciting. We are running this with several clients at the moment, and we're seeing incredible results, even compared to traditional Kepler store users. And it is much more prescriptive, it is predictive, and it is almost, I guess, simplifying the use of the data with less analysis required. And this is a very exciting new frontier for us. We want to ensure that the data continues to add productivity to your stores, and this is something we're going to be rolling out very soon. But if you are keen on an early look into it, again, very happy to walk you through it. Just reach out to us and we will do so. At the moment, the code name for this is the one thing that matters, and it's coined by one of our clients, and it's about focusing the store teams specifically on what will make the biggest difference in the store now. So that's something that we're very excited about. The third element is optimizing inside the store. Now, most of our stores are not very large in format, but if you do have larger format stores, we are very happy to help with understanding where customers visit first in your store, how this visitation relates to their cross-buying across departments, and positioning of merchandise in order to maximize that basket. Tony shared data earlier that is very clear that even though sales is up on pre-pandemic levels, it is mostly driven by ATV. The transaction numbers are equal to or less than pre-pandemic, and this is a worry with the economic uncertainty and the willingness to spend by customers potentially dropping. So adding on more product to that sale when they're there and ensuring optimal cross-purchasing will be very, very helpful going forward. So this is something that most of our clients, they don't roll this out across the board, but they have specific stores that they want to study in order to optimize the layout of the fleet. So this is something that we're very happy to help you with as well. And finally, a quick update on our mobile app progress. I know this is a big request from a lot of our client base. We are at the design prototype stage, and we will be very soon doing beta testing with several clients. And we are very excited about this. We want to ensure that we get the mobile app in the hands of your team and yourself as soon as possible. We will be able to provide a exact timeline about this once we have exact scoping of requirements and feedback from our beta testing client base. But this is a big focus for us to ensure that the relevant data and insights can be at the tip of your fingers as fast as possible. So that's Kepler in a nutshell, where we're at. And again, very committed to ensuring that we provide you with the insight to navigate through whatever's ahead of us. And please reach out to us. We're here to support you.
Thank you so much, David. And for anyone that attended our Kepler Analytics Conference last year, we have a lot of eager beavers out there ready for our apps. So I'm sure that there'll be a lot of excitement in the audience and the news of this coming very shortly. So, and also the piece that you were just showing us before around some of those new things that are coming. We'll be scheduling some webinars in the coming weeks to showcase and properly demonstrate those to you so that you can see what they look like. How would you use them? How's it going to benefit our business? So some really exciting things coming for 2023. And also just looking at this time of the year, David, we know that this is the time retailers are resetting, looking at their plan in the lead up to the grand final being Christmas. So that planning happens now. So this will be a great time to certainly be talking about some of these initiatives in the business so that they're not teaching anything new at Christmas time. I'm excited. Thank you, David. And I think this is the first time that you've joined us for one of our webinars. So it was fantastic.
Very happy to be here. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you all enjoyed today's session. We'll be sharing the content with you after today's session. You'll also see in the handouts as well, you can download some of those. So I'll give you a minute to download them so that you've got a copy of them. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll no doubt see you very soon for the next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.